everyone. Today is a special episode. We have with us today Trish Thurley, who has run several businesses. She's a business educator, a project management expert, and somebody who is sought after for her leadership skills. So thank you, Trish.
Oh, thank you very much for that introduction.
There you go. This is the Sales Ops Effect, where we strengthen our skills as strategic leaders to grow businesses with integrity. And we wanted to talk today about accountability. You know, we're finishing up November 2023 at time of recording, and it's been a year. I think most people can say it's been a year in one way, shape, or form. In every single way, you know, in the political environment and everything else. It's been a lot, and in the professional environment. One of the things that's really stuck out to us both this year is accountability, or lack thereof, quite frankly. You know, and I'm wondering, is this something like the lack of accountability that you've seen? Is this something that you think has gotten worse over time, or maybe is different as a result of COVID, maybe people just getting back into the workplace, even though many people never left? Or do you think we're noticing it more now?
You know, it's interesting you say that, because I do feel that it has got worse over the time that I've been working.
Yeah.
Which is more decades than I like to admit to. I think that one of the things around this is the fact that everything we say, everything we do has the potential to be recorded. Yeah. Everybody's got a phone. Everybody's got a camera on them all the time. And everything, all the data that you produce is stored somewhere.
Yes.
So where you might have been more carefree about just saying what came into your head, I think now that people think I might be blamed for that, or that might be brought back to, beat me with at some point in the future. Yeah. So I think people are reluctant to take decisions in the same way that they used to, and to give a definite opinion on something if they think it might, come back to bite them.
I didn't even think of it like that. But yeah, I have experienced a lot of people not wanting to make decisions. I didn't think of it from that standpoint. I think I probably thought of it more from people not feeling encouraged, or maybe just different industries that you're in, the personality type that draws doesn't necessarily draw a extroverted person. But do you know what? You're right, as you're saying now. Well, okay, so if that's the case, then how come it affects some people and not others? Because I know I'm being recorded, but I don't feel like my desire to speak up or adhere to what I said I was going to do has changed.
I also think, just going back to you said about people not making decisions, funnily enough, I was just studying something on this today for preparing a lecture for some point in the next couple of weeks. And it was making the point that people need different amounts of information to make decisions.
Okay.
Some people are comfortable with less information and they will trust themselves more to make decisions. Other people need lots of information. And I think the fact there is more, there's almost a limitless amount of information available once you start looking, that you can go down a rabbit hole of the amount of information that's available. And you think, well, maybe I just ought to check a bit more. So again, I think people, some of it's to do with confidence and trusting that you make decisions, which is a combination of your head, the facts, your heart, your emotions, and how you feel about something, and also your gut, which is your instincts, your experience. So I think that people are less maybe trusting of themselves to make a decision quickly, and they're looking for more information. And of course, there's an endless amount of information out there.
That's really interesting as well, because, okay, so if you're less trusting of yourself, do you think there is a direct connection between being less trusting of yourself now because of the technology that we've got, or because of other reasons? Because it could be two different things that's causing the lack of accountability problem.
I think it can be both of those things. To say one is whatever I say might come back to haunt me, and the other is if I just had a bit more information, I'd be able to be more definite about something, or I would be able to rule out some of the multiple of options. We've got a lot more choice than you perhaps had in the past. I mean, choice is very much a modern, I think of it as a modern disease, that we've got too much choice.
Yeah.
We've got too much information and too many options, and it makes it difficult to actually commit.
Yeah. And as you're speaking again, I was thinking about perfectionism, because perfectionism is one of the more insidious ways that fear disguises itself. And it's definitely something that I've suffered from a lot, because I'm very efficacious. I like to do the right things in the right way. But that's not the same as being perfect, because you can't be perfect. But perfectionism, it's toxic. So again, that would be the link then, wouldn't it? Because you're trying to be perfect because you're being recorded.
Yeah, there can be, and a kind of fear of being misinterpreted. Again, there is a particularly current culture about people sort of taking offence at things. We see this a lot in the university where a lecture, that you have to be careful before you give your own opinion on something in case it upsets somebody. So as a result of that, it's easier to duck, sort of like avoid making decisions, avoid giving opinions, avoid doing anything that can be seen too definite. So people are a little, fluffier about things. There was an article on Radio 4 today. They were talking about politicians. In the past, politicians who are elected representatives were able to make decisions on things and make, sort of policy. And now so much more of it is actually sort of pushed off onto the judiciary. So because, things like the recent decision about deporting illegal immigrants to Rwanda. So in the past, that was a decision that politicians could have taken. But now it was seen as a way of saying, for politicians saying, it's not our fault that we couldn't put this policy in place, because judicially it was reviewed and they said, sort of Rwanda's policy is not up to scratch, so that they can appear to be doing something while actually not taking some of the hard actions. And it's not because they didn't try; it's because somebody else said
no. And so, because I know fully well I could end up talking about politics till the day ends. But looking at, maybe that's the changing trend then. People's roles, particularly people who should be making the decisions, because they're the only ones with the authority in the business world as well. They're looking to people who are reporting to them to figure it out, so that they can say yes or no because of those reasons. And that very well could be the changing trend, because it's definitely something that I've seen where people are in these positions and they don't know what they're doing and they don't even know how to learn. And that's outstandingly bad. It's just, you don't know how to do something, because you get into positions where you don't know how to do things all the time, or situations, right? But you ask, you learn, you try to figure it out. But I feel like, as well as that's a part of the accountability, is the figure it outness it's really waning. And it's just I'll just rely on somebody else to do the work. They will never get any thank you, because, well, we're in a situation we just need to get it done. And I've just seen it so much this year in so many different ways. with, you know, people that I work with, and people that I train in their companies, it does seem a little bit like a professional epidemic that nobody wants to make a decision.
Yeah, and you can be sort of attacked for the decisions that you take, but you're less likely to be attacked for the decisions you didn't take, especially if you say, I'm still making up my mind. There's an availability of more opinions, more viewpoints, I'd say more data, and more of a harsh culture in judging people for what they did.
Yeah.
Even if, you know, you've seen that in television, it's very predominant. Is it going back and finding something somebody said a decade ago and applying today's standards to that, today's acceptability levels to it, and it was said at a very different time in, you know, under very different circumstances, and because we've got all that sort of back history, we can go and find where somebody made a poor decision, didn't, you know, think it through properly, or it seems, in the light of what we know now, it seems inappropriate in lots of ways.
Yeah, and you've got me thinking again, maybe, again, because things progress with time, as with, you know, opinions and everything. So maybe one of the things that needs to grow to balance out the fact that we have extremely high levels of recorded history is the ability to understand nuance and to like determine rather than to be black and white about everything. Because this can be about absolutely everything. And it's not to say that even, you know, after you apply nuance, that person's still a bad one. It's the same. But I think the outright just shouting "stone her" isn't helping. Like, you know, it's just let's take a breath and actually look at this. What was the full clip? What actually happened? You know, and so maybe that is seeping through into the business world as well. Have you had any examples this year of any particularly egregious points of accountability, lack of accountability?
Struggling to think of a standout. Like you say, it's very prevalent. But I think I've seen within, because I deal with lots and lots of different companies, and I've seen lots of people hiding behind compliance and hiding behind, you know, sort of some bureaucracy as a way of protecting them. You say, I couldn't possibly take that decision, or I can't use my judgment in any sort of way.
And what are you there for?
So there's a lack of, you know, if anybody's in anything like customer service, if you've got any kind of complaint or grievance, or you're trying to escalate something through a business, then you know, there's lots of I'm just going to read the book at you, sort of thing. You sort of get, and you can even to the extent where they're reading passages of compliance legislation at you, because that's going to, you know, sort of protect them. And if somebody doesn't know, if they don't know their way around the law, they can you know, sort of blanket. I'll just sort of spout compliance at you, and
that'll make it go away.
That'll make it go away. Yeah, so I don't have to do anything that feels too hard.
Oh, okay, I've got two entirely different thoughts in my mind, but I'll go with this one. That's scary because basically, if the human is going to start to behave like the robot, and we are in an age where we've got AI that's just bumped up on the scene and it's gone crazy in the last 12 months, then in a very large way, people are going to start doing themselves out of jobs. And the only people that are going to be able to find the what will then be seen as outstanding jobs, or to be an outstanding customer service representative in some way, shape or form, will be people with the human skills. So people are scaring themselves into behaving like robots.
Yeah.
And they'll be replaced by them. And they won't have the skills to teach other people. That doesn't make any sense. So there's, yeah.
And also I think, things like Twitter have created an environment where rhetoric is out of fashion. It used to be quite acceptable that people would debate a term and try and persuade one, debate an issue and try and persuade one another of one point of view or another. And this sort of like the debate would go on, and maybe people would slightly change their position. What you get with something like Twitter is a sort of everything moves to the far sort of end of the spectrum, and there's a lot of just shouting at each other, shouting opinions and logic at each other. No attempt to persuade or debate through to try and come
or
to
even just to understand.
So it goes in through history. It goes in phases. Sort of that. I think logic predominates, rhetoric takes a back seat, and then it comes back into fashion again. So that it may well be that people will get very, very tired of this sort of shouting at each other from the margins, and that rhetoric will come back into fashion. I don't know. I think people are already starting to get extremely sick of compliance and having, sort of it's acting as a real brakes on innovation and creativity. And what we really need at the moment, with the mess that the planet's in, is creativity and innovation. You can't do that in a highly sort of straitjacketed environment. You have to give people freedom to make mistakes and learn from those mistakes.
Yes. And if you were, sorry to cut you, but again, if you had proper project management practices, you'd be able to pick up on a mistake before it became something terrible. You can see the little stuff before it's a big thing. And that's where, creativity and compliance can come together, because, you've got the case of the RAAC concrete problem, which for our international listeners, we had an issue where I think people were acting outside of compliance, or our compliance laws weren't strict enough. And so buildings have been made with concrete that just spontaneously explodes after a while. Like my friend's little boy was in a nursery, and they found that they had that concrete in the other day. And so everybody just had to, as an emergency, come pick up their kids.
Yeah.
Because, and so you do need compliance, but you do also need the creativity. It's just how and when is it applied, and it needs to be you need to have real structure around these things so that it allows people to be creative and to think openly, whilst they know that they've got like safety measures. Yeah. And within projects, we've always taught this idea of phasing projects and having intermediate milestones. And one of my favourite sayings I picked up from my mentor was the fact that you need a microscope and a telescope. So when you're down in the detail and you're figuring things out, it's like the microscope, you're sort of close in on the problem and what you're doing. At key points, you need to step away from the detail, pick up the telescope and look back on, say, right, what have we learned from what we've done? And looking forward, are we going to get to where we want to by doing what we're doing here? So you kind of gain that perspective by, so neither of these standpoints is fully accurate in its own right. But to move between the states of looking closely at something, being in the detail, stepping back and gaining the perspective, the bigger picture, it's something that we teach in projects. It's a really good thing, so that you can get stuff done that people can quickly learn from mistakes, but you don't then allow those mistakes to be, in some cases, fatal, or very costly. Yes, and that's the kind of compliance I'm talking about, like forcing people to say, okay, you've gotten to this point, step back.
Yeah.
review everything. What have we missed? Like, where are we on the timeline? Where are we on cost? Where are we on quality? What is things looking like? You know, and maybe we just need to think about all of this stuff differently. But, you know, it's kind of hard. We've been running with what we've been running with now professionally for a very, very long time. And so it's even like the ideas of employee engagement and actually asking your staff how they feel. People had to be convinced to do that. So to be convinced to be creative as well as apply compliance in a more humane way at any level, I think is going to take some time.
Yeah. And I've heard people saying in various environments, I won't quote any companies or institutions because the people, you know, were saying things in confidence, but people saying that if I get asked how I feel or an employee survey, I actually don't put the real opinions or truths in there because somebody knows that it was me that said it, and that might come back to haunt me. So it's just like everything's fine.
Yeah. And that's such a particular one, because again, I've even seen more stuff on LinkedIn recently about if you're in different demographics in certain organizations, you really can't bring your true self to work, for example. And I think, because I'm a few of those demographics, including being neurodivergent, and I definitely do relax more when I've been in organizations, when I've been there long enough for the, it used to be 1 year that you could be fired for no reason. And then basically after that threshold, I could relax and then say more about what I wanted to say.
Yeah.
And gosh, it shouldn't be like that. But at the same time, depending on the company that you're in, and yes, people can move companies, but sometimes there are a lot of companies that are really not okay. You can't always speak up. But how would you handle, let's say somebody's got a manager that isn't being accountable to themselves, or in some extreme cases, they do know that they haven't done what they said that they were going to do, but they then don't do anything to change it? Because that is what I've been hearing a lot of this year.
Yeah. I would always try and work to put in place systems and processes where there is a high degree of transparency about what happens and who was supposed to be doing something.
Yeah.
So even as simple as, you know, project meetings, capturing what's going to happen, who's going to do it, and when's it going to be done by.
Yes.
And having some way of sharing that publicly. It might be on a SharePoint. It might be, you know, sort of, it could be just we did a flip chart in the room and took a photograph of it. Just said, you know, sort of, I'm going to do this, you're going to do that. And going back and revisiting that. But in some cases, if that person's senior, it's hard to make them feel the consequences of not having delivered their action. And then it gets into an awkward situation where if what they're not doing is affecting your job, then you've got no other pathway other than to escalate it around them. But, you know, sort of giving people feedback, I think giving people candid feedback about what's working and what's not working, I think is essential. And I see a lack of candor and a lack of training on how to give feedback.
Yes.
So that people don't realise that, you know, so it's not the same as criticising somebody. And a lot of feedback should be positive. So you're positively reinforcing great behaviours. Yeah. And for many situations, the positive reinforcement works far, far better than negative reinforcement. Somebody told me once, you cannot train a cat using negative reinforcement. You can train a dog, but not a cat. So I think we have to be more cat. Yeah. And look, you know, find people doing things right and actually give them really good feedback, but also not being frightened to sit down with somebody and say, look, this isn't working for me because I wasn't able to do my bit. because you didn't deliver on your bit.
Yeah.
How can we sort of make that better going forward?
Yeah.
And actually getting it out on the table. And I always think about, so any situation like that, it's not, you're not the problem. The problem is here.
Yes.
And we need to solve that problem together.
Yes.
So it becomes much more collaborative in terms of it. But I think candor, feedback, a bit of courage as well. I think some people lacking, or they shy away from it because they feel that giving candid feedback, they feel uncomfortable with it.
Yeah.
So they've got to be trained how to do it well and be able to practice in a safe environment.
Yes, I completely agree. And I'm a recovering people pleaser. And
me too.
And, it took me a long time to be candid with people so that I wouldn't get to the point where I blew up at them. I'm an emotional being, right? And you do have to practice it. You do have to practice it. As I try to think of it of if you know what you're saying is in your mind correct, at least the facts are accurate. So let's not say correct or right or wrong. The facts are accurate. Then separate the facts from the feelings. You don't have to ignore the feelings because your feelings are still valid. But if you know what the facts are, and then you know what you want the solution to be, because it's going to be better for both the parties involved, then you can go at it from the facts perspective. Because I know a lot of people, once you get to that point where you're getting really frustrated and angry, it's really hard to see through the fuzziness. And I think that's helped me a lot, learning how to manage upwards. And I've had my issues over the years. But still, because even when you do say what you need to say and you are candid and you've been taking your notes and you've escalated it if you need to, then quite frankly, if you've done everything that you needed to do and things still fall down, okay. Okay. There's only so much. You can't bend yourself into a million different shapes to fix every single solution. Yeah,
but I think being strong and being true to what you're trying to achieve is quite important. I think some people give up too easily when it comes to, and they allow themselves to be browbeaten or bullied or just overwhelmed by somebody else's stronger personality.
Yeah.
So I think it might be Lady Macbeth. Screw your courage to the sticking place. I might have misquoted that. I don't know. But it was kind of like thinking, no, I'm going to have another go at this and I'm going to stick to my guns. I'm going to explain to somebody why this is not working for me. And they always say you can't change someone. You can only persuade them to change themselves.
Yes.
And if they won't change themselves, then you have to go round them, over them, or above them. But it's kind of like trying everything to, get that person to live up to what they said they would do. And if not, it's being, strong enough to follow through on that as well.
And I think...
I know you are.
Thank you. I definitely have, appreciated your help over the years with helping me to understand that. And the backup support is appreciated. And I think one of the things that I've learned more recently, and I'm hoping this won't come out as confusing, but I'm going to say it anyway. It's like, I have never been comfortable with the idea of pushing other people. I don't like it. And yes, that's whatever. I'm a really soft person to some degree. I don't like the idea of pushing. I like the idea of, I do me, you do you, and we'll rub along nicely. I don't want to push. However, how I've started to think about things when people are encroaching on my boundaries because they're not doing their job is that, you know what, you're not pushing if somebody else is in your space. Because if you've got your area and they have stepped out of their area to come into your area and they're taking up space in your area, you're not pushing them by just taking up your own space.
No, you're reestablishing your boundaries.
You're reestablishing your boundaries. You're expanding to fit your own space.
Yeah.
And it's like, I know about the whole establishing boundaries or whatever, but that's the visualization that came into my mind, is that this is my circle and you're spending far too much time in my circle. your circle's over there and you're not even tending to it. The grass is very overgrown. It's like, you can go back there. In fact, it's up to you what you do, but this is my circle. So if you're going to be in my circle, then whatever happens to you in here, like, oops, but I'm going to expand to fill it. And if you're up against the walls, then there's a door, and I don't know why, but maybe that'll help somebody else as well. But that feels a little bit better to me, because I just never feel, I don't like, again, recovering people pleaser, feeling like I'm pushing anyone. But this is my space.
And a lot of people don't like conflict. Really makes them feel uncomfortable. And even if, somebody who's quite close to me, she said, I have quite a lot of conflict in my job. So when I go home, I don't want any conflict at all. So she capitulates all the time to her partner because she thinks, I just don't need to be fighting my corner at home. But as a result, then gets walked over quite a lot.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of, if you're having a negative experience of conflict can be really positive and productive. It's sort of like getting things out in the open, clearing the air, and re-establishing a positive way forward. Again, if people can be helped or shown or trained to handle conflict better, they don't need to be frightened of it. If their experience has been wholly negative. And that comes back to psychological safe spaces. If somebody has been inclined to massively humiliate you if you dared to say that you weren't happy with something, then you probably are a little bit averse to that.
Yeah.
But it's sort of, again, a factor of assertiveness, being assertive, and you say, state in your facts, keep in your ground, planning your game plan for going into that conversation.
Yeah.
Not thinking I need to win this fight, but is, like, we need to solve this problem. We need to get on and move beyond this. We take the personal out of it and try and, productively solve the problem.
And that's where my thoughts are as well. That's why I find people who aren't accountable to themselves or to what they just said that they were going to do, it's progress can't happen like that. So even if you are afraid, it's like, what are you in this for? What are you in this project for? What are you trying to do? Why are you here? What is the purpose of your work? Because if you're spending all day long going, la 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 la, that's not me, I don't have to decide on that, I don't have to then that's your job. It's just moving things around. And I've seen people who that is their whole job. Like, you're being paid what to do what now? It's like, aren't we supposed to be doing something? Isn't that the point? Have we lost sight of this?
But I also think the other people who need to be picked up are those people who are gaining their own power by doing everything for this person. Is like, come here, I'll do it for you. And so they're covering for some level of incompetence because it makes them feel good, powerful. They gain political points by actually, covering for this person. And so as much as tackling the lack of accountability with the person who's not performing, I think it's also important to point out to somebody, do you realise you are reinforcing that behaviour? You're enabling that and you're reinforcing it.
Yes.
They're able to keep on getting away with it.
That's such a brilliant point. I'm so glad you made it. It's because you don't realise when you're in that situation. Because I've seen people who I call them like the people who are firefighters that start their own fires. It's like, you didn't need to let that go on that long, but you're dealing with it at the last minute because when the client calls you and says, oh my God, thank you, you're getting off on it. Stop. Because you're going to go so far that you're going to burn a building down at some point. And, so that's very similar to that. But that things do need to be just dealt with. And so I think, to sum up, you're going to come across these people, but that doesn't mean that they have to stay like that, or you just have to take it and just be beaten down. by it all the time, because it definitely affects me when I don't feel like I can progress things, because that's the point. But it can be dealt with in one way, shape, or form. And again, that trying to help, even if you're trying to help for good reasons, it can and will be taken advantage of, because it's like, actually, if somebody's just had a bad day or they just don't understand something, that's one thing. However, if this is going on for a long time, they're using you.
Yeah. But sometimes it takes somebody else, this is where the feedback comes in, to actually hold a mirror up to you and say, did you realize you were doing that?
Yeah.
Because sometimes we fall into a bad habit.
Yeah.
So I think, things, there's a lot of self-help out there in terms of dealing with conflict, giving and receiving feedback, also being assertive,
yes,
and negotiating, situations. So I think to help people get some support around those things to make them, sort of tackle the lack of accountability in others around them, if it's making their job hard or if it's making them feel bad.
Yeah. So guys out there, if you'd like some more talks about how to do things like that, let me know, because I think I'd like to dive into a couple of those areas. Thank you, Trish. I've loved this.
Thanks, Charlene. I've enjoyed it too. Good conversation.
Yeah, me too. And I'll be seeing you soon. I hope you have fantastic ends of your year. And we'll do it all again in 2024. We'll see you later. Bye.